Welcome to Josh's House of Nerd podcast.
Hello, Nerd Nation. I'm Josh, and I welcome you to the podcast. Grab a cold evergreen goblet of blue milk and make yourself comfortable here at my House of Nerd. Now, for tonight's sponsor, are you looking for a place that feels like home? Are you looking for a place where the food does not look or taste like a bowl of snot? Are you not really feeling that adventurous? Well, boy, do we have a place for you here at Cypher's Blue Pill Diner and Grill. Here you will be content with the same things that you've always have been and not have to try anything new. Come to Cypher's Blue Pill Diner and Grill, or if you go somewhere else, you'll keep wishing you were here. Come check us out. Now on to tonight's podcast, where we are talking about, if you already haven't guessed, The Matrix, which is my pick for this month, which is movies about martial arts. And tonight we're talking about The Matrix, which was directed by Lillian Lana Wachowski, starring Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, Lawrence Fishburne, Hugo Weaving, Marcus Chung, Belinda McClory, and Joe Pantoliano. Let's talk about this movie, guys. What do you think about The Matrix?
So the Matrix was the first R-rated film that I have ever seen in my life.
Is that right?
It was, yep.
Wow.
And I know this because I stayed home sick from school and watched it. after my father specifically said no to letting me watch this. So I said, screw that. I'm watching it. Stayed home from school sick and watched it.
What was it on? Like HBO?
No, we had it on tape.
Oh, so okay.
I had to make sure the tape was put back the exact same way, that it was rewound right to the exact part it was on. Because I had this idea that he was going to check it all the time, which of course never happened.
But you never know, though. Did you look for the hair that was like, also like?
No, I would have been screwed if that was the case.
Taped it in place.
I don't know how much he actually cared. I don't know if it was more of my mom that kind of pushed that one through, or if it was really like, you shouldn't do this, and I'm going to tell you not to do this, but if you do it, I'm not going to really throw a fit about it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, from my point of view, yeah, it's rated R, but, I've always, and we've talked about this before in other places, that I don't feel like this should be a rated R movie. It's rated R, but to me, it doesn't feel like it should be. And I know ratings can be very, very different, and really depends on the people who are giving the ratings at that moment. But, it's funny when you watch it on, like, say, TBS or some of these other cable channels, when they edit it, there is so little edited out. It is ridiculous. It is so crazy how much they edit out for, TV. It's pretty much left in its entirety for everything except for a few little pieces and parts. But anyways, just I find that one's funny. We used to sneak this movie all the time when I was up at college. They were always against rated R movies at BYUI and in our apartments, and so we were always sneaking under the what are the RAs, the managers of the building. You were always kind of keeping an eye on people watching the rated R movies, and we'd always watch this one. And I mean, we got caught a few times, but the RA was like, whatever. Go ahead. Just don't let me catch you doing it again. Because we absolutely love this movie.
Yeah, I didn't realize that college had those types of restrictions.
Yeah, you have to sign an honor code against stuff like that.
Sure. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's that was one of them that you couldn't do. R-rated movies. So, but we always got around that somehow and watched it a lot.
as most kids do.
Yeah. I was one of the few people who had a DVD player up at college, and people would flock to our apartment because of that. So anyway, as everybody can probably tell out there, I really, really like this movie a lot. I almost missed it in the theater, but some friends when I was working for Staples back in the day grabbed me and invited me. There were two people that I didn't normally hang with, and they're like, "Hey, come and see this movie with me." I kind of overheard them, and they invited me, and I went and saw it, and I was absolutely floored. This is one of the few movies I have ever watched that I had no idea what I was going into to watch. No clue. I mean, that's such a rarity these days. But back then, I mean, even then, I hadn't seen hardly any previews or nothing. And when I saw this, I can feel the feeling I felt when Neo comes out of the goo into the real world for the first time, and I can feel that shocked feeling of disorientation when that happened the first time and stuff. Even to this day, and I'm still kind of looking for that high.
Yeah,
Of movies that do that to me. Go
they
ahead.
had a real it felt like they had a real under the radar media push for this, because I had the same experience as far as like I didn't know anything about it when we went in to see it. I
Yeah.
think one of my friends saw it first, and then I was like, okay, and then we went to the theater and saw it, and yeah, it basically cemented the idea in me for me about not watching trailers past like the first concept trailer or something that doesn't necessarily show the story. And yeah, it was an intense watch for sure. First time, like it's hard to recreate that.
No, I'm still jonesing for it. I still wanted, when I watched the Matrix Reloaded, I was looking for that. And of course, it's not there, but you already know what's kind of going on. It's one of the bigger reveals I've ever had. I don't even remember feeling that way even when I found out that, Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's father. I mean, I was just like, oh, that's cool. And, but that's probably because I was younger at the time. I was like 8 years old when that happened. This time I was a little bit more of I was a, young adult and found this out for the first time. I remember feeling like tingles, like I had the hair stand up on my arms. And I've rarely ever found a movie that does that. Matter of fact, I always am looking for something that will do that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching it the first time and trying to figure out like what is the deal with the magical phones? Like on the first set piece with Trinity and everything. It's like,
Yeah.
Okay, like it just like everything up to that. It's like, oh, this is a kind of film noir, cool, magical sci-fi show. This is just kind
Yeah.
of like real life anime or something like that. And I'm with it. It's okay. This is interesting. It's not anything crazy yet. I mean, it's a little weird. What are these FBI
What's the
like
chick walking on the
dudes?
wall for somehow?
Well, no,
Type thing?
even that felt
Yeah.
more like just, oh, that's kung fu, wire fu. That's just stylized fighting for some
Okay.
reason, which we
Sure.
haven't figured out. So I didn't even think that was weird. I was just like, oh, that's cool. They put that in the movie, and then and then when he ran the truck into the phone, I'm like, why is she trying to get to the phone? Why is the phone important? If she's going to answer this phone, I'm like, this makes no sense. And that's when the show really hooked me. I was like, oh, this is going to be a weird ride. And it was, but it was a great weird ride. So yeah,
She had to make that collect call.
yeah. I was like,
10 220. Come on. I don't need 1-800 collect anymore.
I was thinking of I'm trying to think of like, hello MCI, can I talk? Oh, that's funny. 10 220. Oh my goodness, I haven't heard that forever.
and then I also remember thinking like, when Morpheus, I guess it's Morpheus, it might be Trinity. We don't know exactly who's typing on his computer. It's like follow the white rabbit or whatever. And I kept thinking, whoever's typing this types very slow and dramatically. Like nobody who knows computers types that slow,
Dude.
For the
And when that happens, like even back in the day, I was just like, those are the wrong keystrokes to try to escape out of that. What is he doing? I didn't even know a lot about computers at that point.
He injected his own custom terminal. That's what that was.
You must have.
Carriage return clears the screen. So yeah.
You had a lot of aliases set up, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here that's just like, especially on a while. I haven't watched it in a pretty good while. I'd say a couple of years at least, probably more than that, probably more than 5 years. And it was great just, watching the show and just going, man, these people are really good at making movies. Like really good at the process of making movies. How well this stands up for me.
That's a good point to bring up. How this was filmed in '99, and I can
Yeah.
still watch it, and I'm not pulled
Well,
out of it because of the technology.
and it's one of those movies that's kind of about tech and yet not, but kind of about tech yet still stands the test of time, which shows, I don't know, it shows that razor thin edge you have to walk on when your movie is has at least somewhat tech oriented.
Well, it's almost like the premise is designed for it, right? It's like, oh, the machine set up the Matrix to be this specific time. And so it's like, oh yeah, large CRT monitors instead of, LCDs or something like that. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it doesn't matter if we watch it later and we're no longer using that tech. Because there's a lot of tech in there that absolutely doesn't exist now. Not really. It's been replaced. But, you know, it's the way the premise is set up makes it timeless because there's no need to question, hey, why is all this old tech in here? It's like, well, the machines have pinned the technology time of the Matrix and internal time of the Matrix to this specific era.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter what it was at that moment. It was that at that moment. Yeah. It's kind of crazy us talking about that because it also came out in '99, and I had to check this to make sure that I was right. The Phantom Menace came out that exact year.
Yeah.
And you look back at the Phantom Menace and how well that's held up. There's many parts of the Phantom Menace that's still pretty good. I think the pod racing is pretty good still, but the rest of it, a lot of it doesn't. It's so CGI and heavy and the CGI just hasn't aged well.
Yeah.
But yet, one of the great things about I think the Matrix is there is CGI in this movie. Of course there is. But there's a lot of practical stuff too. I mean,
a ton of practical. You
yeah,
imagine building that set to lift him out of the goop when he comes out of it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's all. I mean, it looks practical. if it's, I mean, I don't think computers were up to doing that level of fidelity back then.
Right.
So, like, they had to build all these practical sets for it, and it felt great.
Well, a lot of people
reuse sets from what was it? Not the Dark World. What is it?
Oh, from Dark City.
Dark City, yeah.
Yeah.
So
with Liam. No.
That old Trinity when she's running across the rooftops, that's from Dark City.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
Yep.
That's some good deep dive stuff right there. I had no idea about that until maybe this last year.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. And when you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, okay, I get that now.
and the way they kind of jump between like dark genres and stuff like that. Like parts of this movie are straight up body horror, and existential horror and stuff like that. It's like when you get it, like I always thought that was weird that, when Neo wakes up in his pod, right? And the machine comes and checks on him and then it doesn't like immediately kill him. Like it just literally just pops his stuff off and sends him down the chute. And I always thought that was weird, but like even worse than that is like if anybody that wakes up voluntarily, which I guess could be a thing because it has to be a thing because the machines have a process for it, right? They wake up in total confusion and fear, right? Have this thing they've never seen before in their life basically semi-attack them, and then they immediately drown to death, owing to a lack of muscle, right? Like that's how the machines get rid of people, and that's just like that's absolutely you're just dying in confusion and fear. Like it's probably one of the worst ways to go psychologically.
But it's efficient.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like no wasted stroke, really. But yeah, it's,
exactly.
And then of course the whole idea of like feeding the dead back to the living. So that goop that he falls into, that's basically just a giant stomach dissolving dead people and then reprocessing back to fed to other people. I bet you he smelled wonderful when he got lifted out of that universe.
I never thought about that being like a spot where that's where they would go to be, die and basically remade into food for other people.
Yeah.
That is quite a thought. Wow. As many times as I've seen that movie, that's quite a thing to think about.
Yeah, it's the wacky, loony thing about this movie is that there's just like all these hints at other things. It's such a if you want to dive into it, there's a whole bunch of stuff there that kind of just pick at and try to figure out. You know, did the filmmakers even think of it this way, or there's just kind of a set piece that was interesting? And the more you think about it, you're like, no, actually, this has to kind of be thought about, and this is the way they wanted things to go. Like they had to sit down and go, okay, Neo wakes up. What does he wake up to, right? And they have to design this whole process. Like, well, why would they leave him alive? And it's because, well, they don't really care about killing him. He's going to die by drowning because we're going to do it this way, and then that type of stuff. It's like, and because they did like a whole 600-page comic for the screenplay to secure their funding, like they knew almost everything they were going to shoot for it, so they came up with all this stuff early. Matter of fact, they had the story for this like a lot earlier than the filming. So
yeah, because I mean, they had to convince the studio. It took a while to convince them to, because they really hadn't directed a lot to really film this movie, right? 'Cause
yeah,
they thought it was too high concept for them.
they had the assassins, which they pinned with God, what was his name?
Is that
Antonio
Antonio Banderas?
And who was he playing off of?
I don't remember that one.
For some reason, I can't remember it either right now. Anyway, it's like
It was Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, Sylvester Stallone. Yeah, that's right.
And Juliana Moore.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And so it's like they pinned that. They did work on. Of course, they did that allowed them to do their movie. What was that? What was
Bound.
The first Bound? Yep. They allowed them to do Bound, and then that set their critical acceptance of that. Got them to do The Matrix, which they put a lot. I mean, the studios put a lot of money into it at the time, and it shows.
Yeah, it absolutely shows.
And I mean, as much as the Wachowskis get credit, I sometimes think they don't get even enough credit for how great of directors they are. I think because of the reception of their later movies, especially the sequels following this one, I think people kind of give them a hard time because it wasn't, those weren't the blockbusters that The Matrix was. But I don't know, as filmmakers, like everything they do, like I still get chills when that camera does that move when Neo's answering the phone in his cubicle, and it moves from his right shoulder to his left shoulder when he's answering it. When he says Morpheus, that's just a cool move. Like just the camera move itself, it's like this is so intentional and stylish and cool. And it's a pretty simple move, but it's like just putting that, and then you see that across the entire movie. Like the camera is not very still; it's always kind of moving a little bit. It's helping the actors and the set pieces work, and I always thought that was great. I mean, that's kind of that whole idea is their bullet time setup. That's kind of that idea on steroids.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you said that, one of the shots that I really love, because of the way that they have the music played up, turned up, is that part where they're taking Neo into the Matrix for the first time, and they do that when they start the dialing sequence, and then it starts swirling around that phone that's in the Matrix, and then all of a sudden, when it swirls back to a certain spot, they're not there, and then it swirls around again, and then they're there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an awesome scene. Matter of fact, it makes me feel chills right now just thinking about it, because I just went, whoa, that's amazing.
I mean, a lesser set of directors would probably do like, some take on, a Star Trek style beam in or teleport or something like that.
It felt like this. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm saying that they just chose to just use a camera trick just to make it super stylish. Like it literally makes no sense. They'd be just standing there posing, like a an alt metal rock band from the late '90s.
It feels like a lot of the sisters' choices were stylish choices
Yeah,
that paid off really well.
yeah, agreed.
Like, and that just cemented the timelessness of this film. Like, this is gonna, and it has stood the test of time, because
hmm
it's harder to tell the difference in tricks versus something CGI or something even cornier. So I mean, it does a really good job.
Well,
Yeah.
you get kind of let's take some perspective of how well it stood up. Okay, I know we've already talked about this, but I want to give you a really good example. Look at the Matrix Reloaded, and the part where Smith and Neo are fighting, and Neo's fighting multiple Smiths, and you see some of those spin moves that they do. He does with the pole,
Mhm.
and a lot of the kind of the trying to add in all the multiple Smiths and stuff into that.
Right.
It looks very blurred and very squishy, very Play-Doh-y
Yeah.
um, when you're going through that. And it's really cool. I know they were they were trying to innovate. They were trying to do something different. I get it. They didn't want to do just bullet time again.
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, right there is where you could see that the technology wasn't up. And the rest of the movie is actually fine.
Yeah,
But
it
it's just that
definitely.
one spot.
Yeah, it definitely. In that movie, it definitely walked into the uncanny valley. It was just
Absolutely.
like, yeah, this is doesn't look like the rest of the movie, and that's probably the biggest knock against that scene in that movie is it just doesn't look like the rest of the movie. So it's like it makes
Yeah.
it difficult to kind of swallow while you're watching it.
And yeah, it's a fun scene beyond that,
Yeah,
you
it
know?
is a fun scene for sure. Yeah.
It's I might knock Reloaded every once in a while, but there's a lot of good there. As a matter of fact, the more I watch it and the more it's over the years, the more it's actually grown on me. I was a little bit disillusioned by it for a little while, that and Revolutions, but they've grown on me, and I like them more and more as time goes.
Yeah, I think they tried to, recapture the magic of the Matrix. I think the story, I think the way they deepen the story throughout the other two. Even when I first watched it, I thought that was more interesting than the action that they did in the other two.
Mm.
I didn't have such a negative view of the other two. I don't think it's as good as the original ones, but I think because of the way they took the storyline from kind of a you know Messiah thing and deepened the lore around
Mhm.
Zion and around the Resistance and around the Matrix itself. I thought was actually done really well in those two movies, and I don't despise those movies because of it. Because I think the philosophical parts of the movies became deeper and more interesting and more nuanced in the next movies, which is I think is a really cool thing, and I think is really hard to do
Yeah.
in Hollywood and in a Hollywood movie. I It doesn't stand up as well, and I understand people that don't like that really hate the other two movies. Like I totally get it,
I don't hate him at
but for
all.
me,
I just didn't
yeah,
like him as much as the first.
yeah, for me they added to the lore and the world building in such a
No doubt.
cool way that I was on board for it, and everything else was just a fun ride. I think those two parts don't necessarily meld that well in those movies, like the extension of the story and also the kind of popcorn movie aspect of it. I think those two things are a little more jarring with each other. Where I think the Matrix is much more concise and cohesive in its
Mhm.
fun aspects and its kind of philosophical aspects in to some degree.
Yeah, I agree with that. Quite a bit, actually. I agree with that. I mean, I mean, yeah, they are really good, but the Matrix, it definitely it doesn't need those other ones, but I do believe that it does help it, and it does. I love some of the concepts in the other ones.
Hmm.
The Keymaker and the ghost that's protecting the Oracle, and the back doors, and I love all of that stuff. It's pretty amazing.
And I know the pretentiousness of the architect has been memed over and over and over again, and people are just find it ridiculous. I'm like, there are parts in this movie that are absolutely ridiculous. Like the shot that's so cool of it spinning around the room, and then they're standing there, like the band. It's like that scene by itself is absolutely stupid. Like it doesn't like it's
Yeah.
literally just there to look cool and look cool in a late 90s way, right? But it
Yeah.
kind of works for the movie because it's kind of, it feels cohesive with the movie. And these people are choosing to run around in leather and trench coats and everything else like that. It's like, this isn't, these aren't adult ideas as far as like, how they choose to dress and act and stuff like that. This is definitely, kind of teenage rebellion style setups, just grown people acting like that. And that's fine. That's what makes the movie fun. But yeah, I mean, acting like the later ones don't have the the first one doesn't have the same level of ridiculousness as the later ones, is a little, I don't know.
No, it definitely does have it. I don't feel like it's on the same level as some of the other ones, but
Yeah.
it's definitely there without without a doubt. Oh my goodness! But that's um, that's just the way it is. One thing I wanted to bring up is up until this point, and I want to kind of get your guys' feel on this. Up until this point, most people knew who Lawrence Fishburne was, right? He was a pretty respected actor even at that point. Carrie Ann Moss, not as much. She was a little bit more of an unknown. But then you bring in Keanu Reeves, and he was looked over a couple times by a couple different people. He was definitely not the first choice. I guess Will Smith was the first choice. And then, what's his name? Crazy man that makes a bajillion movies. What's his face? The guy was in Ghost Rider.
Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage. He was the second choice, actually.
Both those actors definitely would have made a different movie than Keanu.
Yeah,
that Neo would have been very different.
Very different. But here's the question I have for you guys. What do you think about the acting of Keanu Reeves at this point? Because a lot of people at this point was really iffy on him. He was more known for a little bit of stiffness in his acting, a little bit of he was more known for being Ted and Bill and Ted and things like that. A lot of people didn't think he was like a strong actor, and do you think that he is a better actor in this movie than they said so? That this helped improve that image of him?
No, I think I don't think he was a better actor in this movie than he was previously. I don't think he's ever been like an amazing actor. Like his
Mhm.
range of expression. I guess it depends on what you're trying to judge acting by. I think the reason why he works for me in this movie is because it allows everybody else to chew the scenery and you don't lose the plot because he's so kind of stoic, right? And
Okay.
he's discovering this too, but he's not extremely emotional about the discovery, right? Um,
Yeah.
and it's like it allows Lawrence Fishburne and Hugo Weaving to just chew the scene when they're across from him, and it totally works, because he's just as bewildered by these strange characters as we are. He's not cynical to them per se, but he's definitely, doesn't understand what's going on just the same as the audience. So as an audience insert, I think he works well in that. I think he's great casting because of the fact that he doesn't overplay his emotions, stuff like that. Matter of fact, I there's several times where he does have to emote strongly. I'm not necessarily with him on that. When he gets out of the matrix and he's like, or not out of the matrix, out of the construct, and he's like, he's gonna pop, and he passes out and throws up on the floor and stuff like that. I don't think his acting of that, like I didn't feel the same thing that he did. Like he didn't make me feel that same way in that scene. And that might just be me. I'm not necessarily saying that
No, I would agree
he's
with you on that.
acting for everybody.
He doesn't act it that terrifically.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, you could imagine, like, Nicolas Cage in that same scene would have been totally different as far as like freaking out about discovering all this stuff. And that I guess it depends on what you want in your actor. And I think Reeves, I can't imagine Neo being anybody else than Reeves, and I think
Yeah,
it's
me too.
perfect for the role itself. But I'm not sure it necessarily, changed my view of Reeves as an actor, as like somehow, he's disappearing into the role, right? Like if it's a spectrum between Will Smith, who would have played Will Smith as Neo, or Nicolas Cage, who would have just picked an idea of Neo and just like pumped it up to 10 or 11, right? I think Keanu's in the middle there. He's not one way or the other. Yeah, it felt like he was a similar character to Point Break, in some ways. I don't know.
Yeah,
And
I'd have to agree with that.
I could totally be missing out on the range of Keanu Reeves acting. Someone come along and say, "Well, what about this and this and this?" And I'll be like, "Okay, maybe I need to go back and rewatch his early stuff and figure that out." But yeah, like that doesn't make me think he's not a good actor. But yeah,
No, I mean he is a good actor. Matter of fact, he's I've seen lots of behind the scenes of him really being a hard worker and trying to do the best that he can and working really hard for it, for every movie he does. That doesn't necessarily mean he's the greatest on the planet, but for the roles that he's played through the years, I think most of them he does just fine in, and the movie doesn't suffer, too much from it, except for maybe Bram Stoker's Dracula. But I mean,
speaking of Dracula,
yeah,
I mean, it's just Keanu Reeves is never going to be, in my head, the same level of actor as like Gary Oldman.
no,
Right? Like, so that's what I'm talking about. It's like if you're expecting a person to disappear into a role, right? You're like, okay, Gary Oldman, right? Maybe that's the top of acting as far as that goes. He's not there, and that's fine. But I don't know. I don't think it showed Keanu Reeves being a better actor per se, because I don't think the part was written for someone to kind of disappear into.
yeah,
I mean, you got to think about it. Neo's kind of a weird protagonist in the sense that he's the audience insert for like 90% of the movie, and then he becomes computer Jesus for the last 10%, which obviously takes him away from being the audience insert unless you're going for a pure power fantasy.
I love it. Computer Jesus, nice. You're not wrong. That's just a funny way to put it. Oh my goodness. That's funny. Yeah, I think, overall I think the acting is good in this movie. It's good, it's solid. Um, you know, it's not mind-blowing, but it's good enough to, satisfy what they needed them for.
Right.
And good enough to, bring the story along and fulfill that part of it. So,
Yeah,
but
I think it's a perfect choice for this movie. I think he's the perfect choice for this movie.
yeah. It's something interesting. I just recently learned. I didn't know about this. With the Wachowskis being, what's the right word? I don't want to use the wrong word here.
Transgender.
Transgender. Okay, that is the right word. Okay.
Okay.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting about that part that they had injected into it was the character of Switch. Do you guys know the background of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you? I thought that was kind of interesting that they were trying to introduce that. And for you all out there that didn't know, the character was supposed to switch genders inside and outside of the Matrix. What's that?
Played by two. Supposed to be played by two different actors.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And said
Warner Brothers kind of kiboshed that.
Yeah, they chose an androgynous looking person. What's her name?
Right. And stuff. So I thought that was kind of interesting that even in that way that they were trying to push the boundaries of
of what had been seen before and what had been done before.
Right.
Yep.
And it was supposed to, they talked about it later, that it was kind of supposed to kind of be reminiscent of kind of the struggles that they were going through personally. And, showing that through, a movie form, which I thought was kind of cool. I did. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it was a retcon as far as like they read a bunch of they basically the Wachowskis quote unquote officially confirmed that, you know, this is a transgender work in a way.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Is it retconning to have made that?
Yeah, that's the kind of the question.
I
Is like,
don't think we'll know. I kind of hope it's not, because then it would cheapen what they would try to do if it was ever found out that it was, you know, this is retconned, and that aspect of it is retconned. I think it would cheapen what they wanted to portray. So that's why I hope it wouldn't be
well, I
if they
don't
have
say,
said and confirmed it.
yeah, I'm not thinking like retcon in that somebody was like, hey, is there transgender in this? And they're like, yeah, totally. You know, I don't think it was that, because I think they were definitely, it's their story. It's a story that they created from their own struggles, right? And so no matter what, that stuff's going to come out if you're writing a story, that stuff comes out in the story writing, like your view of the world. All right. So I don't think that they necessarily, that there aren't any themes there and they just kind of latched themselves onto it. But I do wonder if they actually set out to put those themes in there, or they're just something that came out of their view of, you know, kind of the world, you know, like I said, like just their lived experience. And they're going, you know, these things are in there, but they didn't set out to tell a transgender story necessarily.
I don't feel like they were trying to tell a transgender story. I think they were trying to put a character in there that maybe was, you know.
Well, they definitely were doing that, but that's not the same
But
thing as having
beyond
the
that, I don't
themes of
think so.
the themes of the movie being closely analogous to transgender and gender dysphoria.
Sure. Boy, I don't know on that. I wouldn't have thought about that. I can say that. You know, watching this movie originally, I wouldn't have put any of those tags on it. But you know, I still don't know. I'd have to look into it more.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole idea of like, you know, the Matrix has roles that are given to you, and the main cast of the the main cast of the movie are basically struggling against the roles that they've been given, and sensing that there's something about the world that is fundamentally wrong, that they've been told, like they've been told the world's one way, but they feel that the world is very different,
Mm-hmm.
and that they need to, you know, reject what the world has told them to find the truth, you know, in that sense, I guess their own personal truth, but still, like, that would be the idea.
Right. Interesting. Have to think about that one a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know,
Deep thought.
they kind of dumped the kitchen sink when it comes to philosophy into this movie. So
They did.
I mean, it's all kind of philosophy 101. I think it's not terribly deep. I think that's why I like the second and third film, uh, you know, as far as like they add to it, because they add more nuance and even more difficult philosophical ideas into it. But there's still, the Matrix doesn't have like, you know, really hard concepts in them. They're, you know, just kind of things like, you know, what is your place in the world? You know, what is truth and what is, you know, lies? Is it worth giving up absolute truth for a relative lie, for a lie that feels better? You know, Cypher's whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of that about, you know, who has power, and, you know, what does that mean, and stuff like that. It's, you know, there's some stuff in there, but it's not, I don't think it's like, you know, hugely deep, but it for a Hollywood movie, that certainly feels deep sometimes, especially for a Hollywood action blockbuster type thing, right?
They're usually too scared to go to those philosophical type ideas for action movies.
Yeah.
And this is one of those rarities that they do. You know, yeah, it's philosophical, but it's pretty bad. You know, badass action too.
Yeah.
You
Well,
don't
let's
get
talk
that
about
mix.
that. Let's talk about that, because this is supposed to be the martial arts thing. So, and we haven't talked about the martial arts very much. What do you guys think of the fight scenes?
They're good. I mean, it was never the fight scenes never sold the film for me, though. It was cool. It was like, oh, this is kind of neat. You know, when he's fighting Morpheus for the first time and how he can load it. But it was never about the fight. It was, oh, they loaded it into his brain, and he immediately knew how to do it. and then like the beating the hardwired construct of speed and stuff like that. So the fights themselves never ever really stood out to me. It was all about the mechanics and all about the
Mhm.
world around the fight for me.
Yeah, I think like the actual martial arts itself, outside of some very amazing shots, especially with Morpheus in the training scene, um, most of them looked very wooden to me. Like the as far as like the actual choreography and it's not so much the choreography was bad. It's just that there were so many mitigating circumstances around the choreography. I mean, uh, freaking uh, Keanu Reeves had to have like spinal surgery, you know, before the shoot. Couldn't even kick, so they had to film a lot of stuff later. Most of the cast weren't uh, trained in martial arts, so you know the choreographers had to work, you know, really hard with them. But they did a good job, and the cool thing is that if you look at the difference between, especially Keanu Reeves's his kicks and punches in this movie versus the later two, he's much better,
Oh yeah,
like
they're all much
a
better in my
ton
opinion.
better. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this movie, they're very amateurish in how they throw punches and throw kicks and stuff like that. And the camera's doing a lot to try to hide it, but not shaky cam, which I appreciate, but it still shows how wooden they are and how kind of slow they are, and not very intricate when you watch other martial arts movies made with people who, you know, kind of a martial artist maybe first, or you know, something like that.
Well,
Um,
you even look at in Reloaded when one of the first fights when he goes back into the Matrix looking for the Oracle, when he's fighting Ghost.
yeah,
I mean
yeah,
that on top of the tabletops and stuff, and
yeah.
that
It's
is
a
such a better fight.
night and day, night and
Yeah,
day.
they're
Um,
more limber. They're throwing. Oh yeah, there's
th-
so much good in that one versus the other ones. It it felt like it filled the hole of a martial arts movie. I mean, if you compared it to like a Jackie Chan movie or Jet Li movie or something like that, um, it definitely doesn't. I don't feel like it definitely lives up to them. Of course not.
well, I mean, like for me, it looks like the first movie they're yellow belts, white belts, yellow belts, and
Okay.
then the later movies they're getting closer to like brown belt. You know, they're not quite black belt yet, but they're definitely moving along that process, and it's very noticeable. And that's actually kind of cool for the first movie because, you know, I guess if you download it, you're also downloading muscle memory and everything else like that, which did have me thinking this time. That's a little bit of a tangent about like, so they load these programs in, right? Like I would need to fly a helicopter, right? I just load this program in, but that program had to be created. What? So they have like probably back in Zion simulators of people sitting down and like slowly learning how to do things. Because I mean, this is supposed to be, you know, uh 21.99 or somewhere around there,
Hmm.
you know. And so like most likely those helicopters don't exist anymore, right? They're flying around in hovercraft. uh so like someone is sitting in a simulator room back in Zion and slowly learning the stuff, and then that gets recorded, and that's what those cassettes are. You know, that's had me think about that this time. It's like somebody had to sit down and figure out how to actually do these things, because are you getting just are you're not getting muscle memory, right? You're getting because muscle memory doesn't, I mean, does that live? I guess it does live in the brain. So yeah, I mean, I guess conceptually you could download it, but still, right? Like your muscles aren't actually. So there's a difference between like, you know how to do something without thinking about it, like drive a car, right? Versus having the muscle, uh, you know, the muscle fibers themselves being strong enough to do the actual move itself,
Hmm.
which of course doesn't matter inside the matrix itself. It's all brain stuff, but still, it's an interesting thing I thought about.
I've never thought about it that way before. I've always just taken it for granted that it's just they just learn it.
Yeah, it's a cool concept, but it also, like I said, it's like one of those things you just kind of pick at a little bit, and you're like, I wonder how they actually got those cassettes. How does that work? You know, and what does that do for their actual, you know, training and stuff like that?
Or how fast they can learn it too. That's amazing to me how they just download it. It kind of reminds me of. I'm talking about the book when I say this, not the horrible movie Battlefield Earth. They had this idea. that they had this technology that literally beamed images and textbooks into your mind, and you learned it but that way. So it kind of felt that way to me when I saw it. That's one of the things I thought of was Battlefield Earth, and that technology that they would learn. They made the man animals, learn with, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, some of that.
I just thought about
what's that?
Hollywood's fight against piracy. It's like you wouldn't download a car, and it's like, well, you wouldn't download an entire lifetime of kung fu lessons.
Yeah.
It's like, the piracy scene then it must be amazing because now you're like downloading life skills. You're pirating life skills. I can now cook like Gordon Ramsay. And I didn't even have to pay him.
That makes me think of another one, Brain Scan.
Yeah.
Where they would, you could feel what somebody else is feeling. I mean, it's all kind of all the above, where they can record people's feelings and you relive it. I mean, I love that show. Anyway.
Or what's that other show? It's a horror show. It's kind of campy. I'll think of it later. Anyway, keep going.
Anyways, that also made me think about that because it's a couple of different concepts kind of all in one. But one of the John, you talk about some of the stuff that makes you like interested. I know we've been talking about the kung fu, but one of the things I thought was like really 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 cool was the construct, when they could pretty much program anything and they wanted into the construct and then take it into the Matrix. I thought of that as for some reason I thought that was pretty stinking interesting as well. Being able to bring whatever they wanted into the Matrix by just loading up and taking it with them. As many guns as they needed. That scene's pretty awesome, by the way. But that's one of the things that always blew my mind, of the concepts and ideas. And there's fights in the Matrix that I really do like. I really do like the fight between Smith and Neo at the end. I still like that, the whole Wild West kind of theme and idea of that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's just a classic fight. I mean, how many people mimic that? A lot of things like the "come to me," with the hands and "come get me" signal and all that stuff. I mean, that's mimicked so much still to this day. Just an iconic fight, and how they kind of jump through the air and they kind of twist and swirl type thing. That's so iconic to me. I mean, that kind of stuff I really did love that fight. And then how, it shows him and Smith fighting each other and how he punches through the concrete pillar. That was all pretty neat to me. Anyways, that's if I had to pick a fight, that's one of, besides like the one with Morpheus and Neo, of course. That would be the other fight that really, really sticks out with me. And then if I had to pick a third, it would be the lobby scene. That's a scene that I just still can't believe that they filmed it with no CGI, but it wasn't. It was all practical.
Great action set piece, yeah.
Oh, God, just amazing. I mean, it took them like, 10, 12 days to do it?
Yeah.
To film 3 minutes of film, but well worth it. One of the best scenes of all time, in my opinion. I still get pumped in that scene every single time. Right from the get-go of, I've seen the kind of the storyboards that they show him where they first come in and he says, "Holy crap," and when he shows them all the guns, and then he shoots that cop right up the middle with the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
I thought from that part on, man, it was on, and it's just such an amazing scene. I just still can't believe that they pieced it all together. And yeah, you look at it, because it is all practical. There's maybe a few little, mess ups or little things here, but it's so minute that it's really hard to pick it out and stuff. But anyways, wonderful scene. So those I would have to pick. Those are my top three probably martial arts scene of this movie if we were going to talk about martial arts. Anyway, anything else anybody wants to talk about? I feel like we're starting to wind down here a little bit.
I'm good.
Okay.
the only thing I have is like, like there's a couple of parts in the writing that I thought was really great. My
Okay.
favorite one is when they're talking about going in to rescue, or before they're talking about going in to rescue Morpheus,
Hmm.
and Neo's saying, you know, I would, this can't be just coincidence, blah blah blah. He's like, and I was told, I have a choice, and stuff like that. And Trinity goes, "What choice?" And she's just asking a question, "What is the choice?" But he's looking at it going, "Yeah, exactly. What choice is there? It's obvious which one to pick." And that's when he makes his decision. And he never answers her question. But I thought that was just, I don't know. It's a small piece. It's not like it's amazing, but that always was a really cool, like, kind of dialogue writing thing that I thought was really neat. It's just basically using the double meaning of the question, right?
Hmm.
And that's pretty much the last one I have as far as like just that we haven't gone over.
Right. I mean, we could deep dive into philosophy, but more and more. But I feel like a lot of people already kind of have through the years of that.
Well, yeah, there
all
are
the
a
religious kind
ton.
of symbolism and all that stuff that's built into it. I think we talked about a lot of good stuff that maybe doesn't necessarily always get talked about.
Well, does the religious symbolism work for you? Like, do you feel like it's a more of a religious, like, I don't know, what do you get out of that, if anything?
No,
I
I
don't
mean,
get any really religious stuff out of it.
Okay, so the whole, Messiah aspect of it, and he dies and then comes back and he's more powerful and able to save people and stuff like that. Like,
comes and
none of
dies
that really
and
hits.
comes
I
back saved by the Trinity. Yeah.
I I see where it comes from,
Yeah.
but it doesn't feel like a sacrilegious bit. It doesn't feel like a cheapening. It doesn't like, and it's not the instant in my mind. Oh, this is Messiah complex, and it's not an instant thing for me. So
Okay,
Yeah, I would agree with that too.
fair enough.
Yeah, I don't feel like it's sacrilegious in any way or shape or form. I
Well,
think
I
they
mean,
touch on.
just
I,
because it's religious doesn't mean it has to be sacrilegious.
yeah. No, I think they touch on it, and I think that it's they touch on it just enough to kind of give it the flavor of it, but they don't delve too deep into it, so which is
Right.
fine. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, then let's go to the ratings. I guess I'll go first. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Trinity saying, "Dodge this," and I own this. Like it so much, I own it in HD and I own it in DVD. So love this movie a lot.
I'd watch it with my mom. There's nothing too crazy about it.
You think she'd
All
like
right.
it?
I know she likes that.
Oh, she does. Good.
Good.
Yep.
If not, we're gonna force you to disown her.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
That's there's only one two things. She likes it or she doesn't, and she's gone. So that's awesome. What do you think, Crit, on this?
I'll give it 9 out of 10 data mini discs.
9 out of 10 mini discs. Nice. You and your mini discs.
Hey, we had them. We were all pointing at the screen. Those are mini discs. What
I was watching that.
things did he put on those mini discs? They have to be data mini discs, so he gave them a program.
Yeah.
Which are actually way more expensive than regular mini discs and didn't look like the regular mini discs for the most part. So those are probably just regular mini discs, but still.
Yeah.
I was watching there's a guy I watched, his name Techmoan on YouTube, and he's been deep diving into mini discs. He bought 100 off of like a bundle off of like the internet, and was like going through them and see which ones he got and stuff. Pretty fun to watch anyway.
Yeah, I still have mine in my mini disc player.
Yeah, you've showed it to me
still
before.
works. And
Yeah.
it still works. Yeah.
This sounds pretty good too.
Mm-hmm.
You had a lot of
Okay,
fun,
are
crazy
we-
music on it.
Are we ready for my picks here?
Yeah, let's hear them, John. Let's hear your picks.
Okay, I will say all of these. Actually, no, I won't give you any hints on this one. We'll just
Okay.
go straight into them. Okay, so the first one is "Don't Stand So Close to Me."
Okay.
The next one is interdimensional hijinks.
Okay.
And the last one is "Bound by Blood." So "Don't Stand So Close to Me," Interdimensional Hijinks, and Bound by Blood.
I think I know what interdimensional hijinks is.
I think I might too, but
and I don't. I mean, if it is what it is, I'd like to know what the other two are.
The third one was kind of hitting me. Bound by Blood.
You just like it as you said, blood.
Blood.
Yeah, let's go with Bound
Actually,
by
I
Blood.
was gonna lean.
Okay.
I thought you would say more of interdimensional one would have been more than I would have picked.
Bound by Blood. So the first one, Don't Stand So Close to Me, is Hero with Jet Li.
Okay.
Okay.
Interdimensional Hijinks is The One with Jet Li.
That's the one I thought it was.
Yeah.
I figured you would. Because there's not many interdimensional martial arts
movies. Yeah.
And the third one, Bound by Blood, is The Warlords with Jet Li.
Okay.
I have not seen that one.
My theme was Jet Li.
Yeah.
In case you didn't figure that out.
What?
He is one of my favorite actors.
Yeah, I almost brought up The One because I feel like Jet Li skipping out on The Matrix Reloaded. I don't know. Like I think for some reason the timeline feels like it was like, and then he came out with The One after The Matrix, and was like, "Oh, we can do big, high concept action, martial arts, sci-fi, type thing." But they only had one idea, like The One.
Yeah.
But still, they only had one idea. That it didn't really have the same hit as The Matrix, but still, yeah.
Was he supposed to be in Reloaded?
Yeah, he was supposed to be Ghost.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, he turned it down because he wasn't going to be. Supposedly because he wasn't going to be the star. It wasn't going to be his movie.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't know if that's true, but yeah, he turned it down, and we got one of Wu Ping's guys. I don't remember what his name is. I could look it up, but we've moved on. All right, so The Warlords.
The Warlords it is. That's one I've never seen, so I can't wait to watch it.
All right.
Have you seen it, John? Or is that just a guess?
Nope, I've seen it.
Okay, just curious. All right.
So.
Next time it's The Warlords and stuff. And thanks for the podcast. Thanks for picking The Matrix, guys. I appreciate it. I've been wanting to get this one on here for a while. And to everybody out there listening, thank you for supporting our channel. Please click the like button if you like what you've heard here. Sure helps us out. And to everybody out there, may you be excellent to each other and live long and prosper from all of us here at Josh's House of Nerd. Have a good night.
Thanks for watching. For more nerdy awesomeness, please like and subscribe.